Welcome back to the World Percussion Group Academy. I am so excited and honored to be here tonight with Nancy Zeltsman. Hello.
Hi.
um, Obviously, Nancy is an amazing educator based here in the US as well, an amazing performer, someone I've looked up to for a very long time, and an absolute pioneer in terms of marimba literature and repertoire. So we are so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
We have quite a few performers today, so if it's okay with you, we're ready to get right into it. There will be 5 performances today, so be an action-packed night.
Great.
Derek will be our first performer today. Hello!
Hey, Derek. Nice to see you smiling. You were very serious in your video, so this is like, wow. He's smiley looking.
Yeah. I don't know. I just always tend to not smile when I play. I'm trying to work on getting my face into it.
All of us. Yeah. Because we're about to do something difficult. So
yeah. I always scared. Like every time I feel like I start to smile when I play, it's like something happens and then I go, oh no, okay, back to serious. I gotta.
Would you like to quickly introduce yourself, talk about where you're from, what you'll be playing today, anything you'd like to share?
Okay. Well, hi, my name is Derek. I'm from Oklahoma. I just graduated from the University of Oklahoma with a master's in percussion performance. And I will be playing Dr. Richardson.
Great.
And I'll be playing Furioso Tango by Claudio Santanello.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going ahead and hop off stage and I will pull up your video. Super excited to hear you play.
Well, thank you.
Really, really nice, Derek. Great
you.
accuracy, and you really got the tango style and the drama. And your time is great. I love the sense of time, especially when there starts to be glisses mixed in. You just always like, you stretch them to fill the time perfectly. There's a lot of dynamics, and there's a lot of variety of effects. So I think all of those are positives. And I listened to this morning, and I really thought about this quite a lot. I have a bunch of things to tell you. They're all in the category of like how to elevate all this. I think everything is already really great. All that structure is there. But so here's a bunch of things. So let's see. I want to now talk in a little bit different order than the notes I made this morning. Well, where I started this morning was with sound. So you have some sforzando chords, pretty near the beginning. And Megan, is it possible to pull up the score that I sent you? I sent for each of you who's going to play today. Oh, beautiful. I marked up a score with some things I wanted everybody to see, to talk about generally. Maybe you can get rid of the sidebar, and then we'll be able to see everything a little bigger, maybe. But it's okay. So I'm going to keep talking about these chords. So, we see these sforzando chords, and I reminded you that some of them are not marked sforzando, some of them are just accented. But on all of those, one thing I'm missing is a feeling of hearing you're balancing that chord. And what I'm really getting at is I need to hear a richer bass sound, because what's coming through a lot is bang. I'm just getting the percussion effect. And on marimba, we can get percussion effect plus, really deep sonorities. So in general, I would encourage you to listen particularly to your chords. I feel like you listen pretty well as you play. I just have that sense very clearly as you play. But I think as soon as something says accent or sforzando, you tend to just kind of kill it. This is percussive, but I think you could get more tone in it too. You're playing on a marimba 1 marimba, and your stroke is very... When I played on a marimba 1 for years and years and decades. I played on marimba 1, and then I went to Adams recently. And one of the things, it took me a while to figure out how to play an Adams marimba after playing a marimba 1. And I don't know how much you go between different sounds, different manufacturers, but I think, we all have to do that to some degree. And it's very interesting to spend a little time thinking about what each kind of marimba needs to draw out sound. Marimba 1, in my experience, you kind of need to... I don't know if you can hear. I'm just going to sort of show you a stroke. You kind of need to, like, or I'll just do it here. You need to kind of like pull it out. And whereas what I learned on an Adams, where the bars are a little bit longer and thicker, I had played for 20 years with the strokes that I just showed you. And then one day I just kind of was playing more simple downstrokes, and it was like, oh, the instrument suddenly just spoke. So I realized what an Adams marimba needs is just bonk it. It needs a more direct kind of attack. So I want you to just think about this with bass notes in mind, especially, but maybe play around with your strokes. And if you do play mostly on a marimba 1, I think you need to think of drawing the sound out a little bit more on the bass. And, you know, every register, I will say, like the, let's say the lowest octave, we'll call the bass range, and then maybe the next 2 octaves, maybe, or the next octave and a half, is also pretty fat and full and long ringing, and then it gets all shorter, right? So whatever register you're in, you really need to not just have the same thought with your 4 mallets. You need to have, okay, up higher ones are going to just go bunk, and lower ones need increments of making sure you're really hearing the tones. Okay, so that's all on balance of chords. Anywhere if you have any questions. So one of the things that I see when you play is a lot of vertical. Of course, your strokes are vertical. But I think musically what's happening sounds a little vertical. And so now I want to move into phrasing. And that's why I marked up this first page of this score to just, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, except I'm going to maybe draw your attention to a little thing. You know that the first 4 bars are an intro, right? And then I marked it letter A. And as we go through different players' scores today, most of the scores we're going to look at today don't have rehearsal letters or anything to do with form marked in them. And that's pretty typical, right? In a solo piece, we usually have rehearsal letters in a duo or an ensemble piece so that we have literally rehearsal letters to say, let's start at letter A or B. I like adding these, and it should help me see the form of a piece I'm learning. And particularly, I don't know how many, whether you or others here may be playing off iPads, but the more I'm playing off an iPad now, I need that more than ever because I just see 1 page at a time. I used to see expanses of 4 or 5 pages and I could see where I am in a piece. And I'm a big reader of music. But so in terms of this formal study you might do, you could label everything A, like A is a theme, A1 is a repeat of a theme, a B is a bridge or whatever. I tend to just go A, B, C, D, E consecutively. So that makes me immediately look at phrase lengths. And this piece is pretty square and predictable in its phrase lengths. You'll see I put a little pink mark, which is, not a music notation thing whatsoever, but that just shows us the 4-bar phrases and that you keep having pickups into them. And the main thing I wanted you to look at is how it goes, I don't know, perfect pitch, and just in case anybody else does, it goes. Okay. I wanted you to see this phrase mark. Then, of course, there's something in the bass, but that's one thing, even though the melody has a hole in the middle. By that way of looking at the phrasing?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Then there's the jump in the bass. There's which I drew with a phrase mark underneath. Right, then we have the 4-bar phrase mark on top, and then we have the little doodad underneath. Boom. And the doodad underneath is always something rhythmic, and it varies. Why I wanted to point this out, and I'm sure you know all this, I think you play it like you understand this phrasing. But I wanted to point out that even though the first 2 things, has a space, this is really ending, right? And then a new one starts. what you end up doing is playing every little cell like a separate thing. And I'm kind of missing that. It hovers and then it ends. And then there's a comment. And then another one starts and it has a space, it hovers. And then it ends. And then there's a comment. And so I mentioned a little while ago that the piece seems vertical. This is one example of that it feels like this little thing, this thing, this thing. And I think you could make it feel like there's a longer, now we got proportions going, like a 4-bar thing and a comment, and a 4-bar thing and a comment, instead of nugget after nugget. Right now the piece sounds like nugget after nugget.
Okay.
You follow?
Yeah.
Okay. So then Santangelo throws some pretty interesting things with where he puts the sforzandos. It's very playful, and I think you should kind of read the message. You know, sometimes once something is memorized as beautifully as you have memorized it, it's good to go back and just look at the score. And, you know, I think that's why I wrote no sforzando a couple times, just, you know, to look at like, no, this one was like, you know, you can play it like you thought I was going to do this, but I'm not. Now I am, you know, so you can build that playfulness in.
Okay.
Okay, then Megan, if you could scroll ahead in this score, you'll see I stopped writing all the phrase marks in. Okay, on this page, I wanted to show you, now I want to start talking about 16th notes. This is going to be a theme for the day. Your piece doesn't have very many 16th notes, but other people's pieces do who are coming up. I think we need to be really careful of 16th notes in the world of marimba, because it's very easy to think that they're the main thing going on. And I think they're usually not the main thing going on. Look at this lick in measure 31. It's just an arpeggio. And I love how you play this. You play it like, you know, just, it's like, whoa, you know, it's very impressive how you play it. I wrote a smile over that one little phrase because I love how you brought that out. And I would love if you didn't bring out all the others so much. One thing I'm going to mention is that I'm a little bit allergic to arpeggios in life in general. So I hope I have a cough drop. Yes. There's a lot of pieces we're going to hear this afternoon with arpeggios. And here's one. The one that comes right before the little smile. I think it's just outlining a chord, and I wouldn't bring that out so much. I would just let it sit back. There is so much interesting compositional variety in the piece until that. And then that's nothing. And you're really bringing it out like, wow, this is my moment to show off. And I'm all for you showing off. You found some other cool licks later, but this is not an interesting one, except for the little part that I marked. So beware of arpeggios in general. I'm going to try to talk you all into downplaying arpeggios. They're just outlining something. It's just a chord. And so dynamically, this is going to be the trick with our big discussion today on balancing 16th notes. Dynamically, they can just come down so that they mush together, and then they form a harmonic purpose rather than, or serve a harmonic purpose rather than a flashy one. It's not an interesting twist of notes to bring out. Okay, one-handed roll section is on the next page. Maybe the next, where does that go? Oh, go back one thing. Well, okay, you're on the rolls here. Oh yeah, okay, good, stay there, Megan, thank you. There's one other little frowny face there. That's just because that's an arpeggio. Okay, next page. I want to talk about the rolls. So you do these so well, but look at this interesting dichotomy right here. He writes mezzo piano and piano, where it says intenso, and you go piano. You're mezzo piano, piano. You sound great dynamically, but I'm not getting intenso. And this is sort of a paradoxical moment, and it's very tango, right? That you're feeling tango is all about, oh, my aching heart kind of feeling, right? And so I'm not getting aching heart right there. I'm just getting Derek is soft.
Okay.
So I think the thing here is to think about singing this. And so I encourage you to just play the melody alone sometime and just sing along to that. And can you sing it? I don't know it well enough to sing it. Let me see it. Okay, so we have, if right now you're playing it very well, but you're not playing it really like a soloist.
Okay.
So imagine if you were singing this and you'd have like a bass and guitar going boom, 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 boom. You go da da da, right? Da-dum. Think about how you'd lean into it and how you'd shape it if you were singing this. Also, this part, so your rolls, right now you're just playing perfectly beautiful one-handed rolls, but it would be cooler if they had some more shape in them and even some little flaws in them. I'm putting in quotes. Like when I just sang Not So Beautifully, I have little catches in my throat, or that's what we love about singers, right? We love the timbre of a singer and, Billie Eilish's breathy voice right on a microphone, so we lean into the imperfections, so to speak. And I think I really challenge you to find some way to make these melodies just beautifully humanly vocal. And if this were Billie Eilish singing this, the bass player and the guitarist would be ready to kind of go with her. This is one part of the piece where I'm glad we have your beautiful sense of time, but within reason, this could be a little flexible because you're accompanying this melody. You should feel like it's on a pedestal. So you could play with the time a little bit here. And Megan, if you go to the next page, I just wrote breathe here between these two big phrases, right? Where you go from the single note to the, I'm now going to sing more passionately, right? So, think about that. And then, Megan, on the next page, I wrote opportunity is where these eighth notes, God, I don't know this melody. Okay, all right, just a scale. Okay, so it could go right? It doesn't have to be percussionist. Bum, 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 bum. It could be, and maybe even look at it like the octaves are a signal of stronger notes. Hey,
Nancy, just to give you a heads up, we've got a couple of minutes and then we'll move on to the next person.
Very helpful. Thank you, Tim. So you see what I mean? Like that's an opportunity to, back to my first point, if we put rehearsal letters in and you see where you are in this whole trajectory of this piece, you'll realize you did all these percussive and dramatic and cool in time things, and then the piece pulled back quiet and got lyrical, and no one saw that coming. And then this got even more souped up and more tango passiony. I don't know if you've done this yet, but I encourage you to just search tango dancing. You know, I don't know if you've done that, but just listen to immediately some ballroom dancing finals are going to pop up in a video. And if you haven't done so already, anybody playing a tango kind of thing, just watch the vibe of the dancers, and you know how like the man will pull the woman in, and the you know, and every move is very, very sharp. And so you want to figure out a way to bring that. That's why I'm looking for some more style things that even just kind of pulls in a funny direction sometime, like these singing examples. Yeah, okay. I think I covered everything. Any questions?
Shoot, I'm trying to think. I guess so, because I'm trying to think about, I guess, kind of stretching the tempo.
So if, let me see, if that's stretched, let's see. If this stretches, so let's see, if you go, the singer's alone there. So the guitar player and bass player will just let her go. And then they're back in. She's on her own. Look at when the left hand's playing, the rhythm section's back in. When the singer's by herself, that's why I wrote opportunity. While the singer's by herself, you could essentially be going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1. Dun dun da da 1. Boom boom. Dun ba ba dum. Boom. So the rhythm section could be in time, and if you put a metronome on and pushed and pulled, you come out the same, right? Basically, sort of something like that.
Yeah. Kind of like, I guess, dancing around the tempo.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Nice one, Derek. Thank you very much. Great job. All right. So I think we're going to move over now to Dana. Megan's going to stay with us because she's way better at sharing scores than I am. So she's going to be a massive help. But we're going to go to Dana now, who is a student of Igor Leshnik and Ivana.
Ah!
Hello.
So we're going to Croatia. Hey, Dana.
Hello, Ms. Zeltsman. It's really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So yes, as they said, I'm from Croatia, from Zagreb. I finished my second year studies, and my main teacher is Igor Leshnik, and sometimes I also work with Ivana,
Oh,
which is really nice. Yes. And I'm 19, and for you today I prepared the Etude in E minor by Pius Cheng. So we can start with it.
Yes, great. Let's watch the video.
All right, Megan, do you want to cue this one up?
Very nice.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So I did watch this earlier today and took some notes earlier. So if you saw my head in the score, I was just getting my thoughts together, but I have watched the video a few times.
That's okay.
So first of all, it's a lovely setting for a video. Is that at the art museum in
Yeah, no,
Zagreb?
it's an art gallery, but yes, similar.
I may have played at that with Ivana once. I played with her in a gallery once. I don't know if
Yeah,
it was
it's not this one. I also work on this piece with Eriko Daimo, and she also told me that she played in Zagreb at some art gallery museum. So I need to ask Ivana which one is it, because it's not this one. But yeah, I need to find that out.
But I love the setting. It's a beautiful video, and you have a really nice performance presence. You have a very robust sound, and that is very striking. And I think it fits this style, but I'm going to challenge you on it a little bit.
Okay.
I think you do have a lyricism in your playing, and that's tied into the robust sound. But I think you could arrive maybe at more variation of lyricism, and that's going to actually be maybe more dynamic variation. So I already gave away that one of the things I want to talk about is 16th notes. So here we are in the field of 16th notes. And I don't think this piece is about 16th notes.
No, yeah, probably not.
Oh, so okay, so you agree. Tell me what it's about then. What are the main?
Well, especially in the parts where it has the 16th notes, but for example, the right hand has octaves, and then in those parts, for example, it would be it wouldn't necessarily be the top leading voice, but it should be more, how do I say, more pointed out, I think. So yeah, that's maybe one example.
Hey, Megan, could we look at this score? Beautiful. So the first thing I marked here is the piece is marked allegretto, which means quite lively, moderately fast. Okay, so what note duration does allegretto pertain to? So if we're looking at something, you know, the instructions are is quite lively, moderately fast. What note denomination, what kind of note is Pius talking about there?
So allegretto would be like a tempo of 110 BPM, I guess. 100 and yes.
Okay, that's one way to look at it. I think we should look at it more abstractly.
Okay.
Well, and also in a way abstractly, but also literally. What is the meter of this piece?
Well, probably the 16th notes. I don't know. No, the 8 notes.
What's the meter?
Yeah, the like
12/8.
Yeah.
And I think 12/8, this is where it gets a little abstract. I think 12/8 is mainly thought of as 4 dotted quarters. I would mainly think of, okay, so when I'm starting an interpretation of something, I really take very seriously what meter did the composer write in, because I think that's my first way they're framing this, you know? So if we're, it's maybe the median tempo you had was maybe, so this 2, 3, 4 would be the 12/8. Boy, it's a little bit difficult to call this quite lively, moderately fast, but maybe, but I still think that's how we should frame it. I think it's, you know, I would look at it as my main meter are these dotted quarters, and this tempo is like the slowest thing I could call fast, but I could think of it as a little bit on the fast side, right? It does have momentum, okay? So this is all sort of abstract. Now, the first thing is a bass line that goes do 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 do, right? The dotted eighths in the bass. And here's an interpretation thought. I feel you played the first 2 bars really freely.
Okay.
If I didn't know Pius and I've never heard anybody play this piece, I would not interpret it that way, because dun, 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 is very simple. It's just an easy breezy descending line, and we just have these little 16th notes. They're just little unimportant notes. And I'll cut to the chase. How I really encourage you to start rethinking 16th notes is first and foremost bringing out note values. Okay. You do this. You're by no means ignoring them, but I think you could hide the 16th or the 16th notes all could be lighter, and then start to bring out a hierarchy of dotted eighth notes is the first longer thing we have. Do, 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 the bass line. And then we have do, 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 dee, da, da. I don't know if I'm in the right key. Bum. And notice notice what I just played, if you could hear that, the dotted eighths and then the long fifth. Those are the long length notes. I think that has to be, So I would rethink the hierarchy of everything that's a longer length note. Pius is saying, he's at the very least saying, make these ring, because he knows he knows we're on a marimba and we don't have a pedal. And, you know, he's writing like Chopin that had a pedal, who had a pedal, right?
Yeah.
But so notice that we all, when we hear this piece, always hear after this. But those two little 16th notes I played, they just happened to be the highest note of their little, you know, they're the peak of the hill, and then there's valleys, but they're not marked to bring them out. So I think that could be looked at potentially as a like a background melody, and that maybe only this I've never played this piece, as you can tell.
It's okay. It's okay.
But, so you can see what we're looking at is the longer length notes is what I want to bring out. Okay.
So basically, the point is, you would try to make it more, in a sense, fundamental, and put the let's say strong points on the longer notes, and use the 16th notes as not. This sounds maybe rough, and but use them as a filler of space, in a sense.
Yes.
Not really, but yeah, in a sense, yeah.
Filler is the perfect word. I also have a funny analogy I use sometimes with 16th notes. I don't know, have you ever had a dessert made out of gelatin, like a flavored gelatin?
Yes.
Okay, we call that Jell-O mold here in the United States. You can make some beautiful things. So you have like some fruit juice with gelatin, and there's little berries inside. Maybe it's very refreshing. 16th notes to me are gelatin.
Okay,
and
makes sense.
I want you to show me all the little berries, right? That's the delicious part that we're getting to. So that's really what it comes down to, is that 16th notes are gelatin. They're just holding it all together.
Yeah.
And what I want you to, I encourage you to start thinking about is what Pius went to the trouble of making secondary voices to show, here is my long thing going there. You know, he keeps it, right? And I think therefore you could end up making make it more three-dimensional, like what's right here and then what's back here. So, and I think the main pathway to that is dynamics, and all longer notes need to be a little louder relative to their length. So you would get pretty far along with a new, interesting take on this piece with just with that. Right now, I do honestly like the robustness of the sound that you played with. But one thing that I wrote down was you're making everything, I underlined everything, very important. And I underlined very important. And everything is very important. It's very hard to carry us along, right? And to then arrive at something that's very important, because everything's been very important. Yeah. So I think this will also give you some stuff to play with to maybe address that.
Yeah, now, now that I listened to this piece again after and some time and many times that I have listened to it, I see that the robustness is a good a good thing, but not all the time. And I think I sense that that's what you're trying to tell me, and I agree with that. I think it should maybe be just in the like the last section, and I should play with other ideas, and yeah.
Yeah. So where I was starting with what Megan has up right now, what note duration, if we were saying that if that's about our tempo, I think Pius is saying, hey, we're just floating in, ding, 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 ding. We're just floating in. I would play the beginning kind of in time and just very simply and show, he's just saying allegretto, we're just setting the stage, we're in 12/8. And because if, whenever there's going to be a lot of rubato in this piece, right?
Yeah.
But save it, because what rubato does is it points to things, so if you as you started it, I mean, it was pretty how you played it, but by the time you went that was a journey by itself, the timing and everything. And I think so then by the time the melody comes, it doesn't really soar, because if you're making too much of everything. So really use your rubato sparingly and to think about, yes, I want to point to this, I want to point to that. This piece and some other marimba pieces inherently have a challenge to them, that they're very often played and they're beloved by many, and we have to be careful then of the game of telephone, as that the game where kids are sitting in a circle and I whisper something to you and you whisper it to the next person. What do we get when it comes back around? Music interpretation of often played pieces can easily go down that hole. I think that's a little bit of a dangerous hole, where if you listen to your favorite video and that person made their video based on their favorite video, et cetera. And the same thing happens. It's not only marimba pieces, it's with all pieces. That's why scores are so fabulous, because we all as individual interpreters can start fresh, and our first stake in the piece can be, what does the score say to me? I don't want to hear everybody else play it. I don't want to copy anybody else. There's plenty of people who can play this. Why play this if I'm going to copy somebody else? So you should really think about what it says to you alone. Megan, if you could please go, I just have a couple other quick things written in the score. The next page, yeah. What catches my attention in that spot that I marked is I really see you going, everything is going right, left, of course, but it's taking over the dotted quarters. We need to come back to, everything should just feel like all these rhythms are floating in the dotted quarters. And so you get it's okay that we don't have the score for the rest of this. I just really wanted you to point you to the starting place is the framing of this in 4 beats to a bar. And then there's the jello, the gelatin. And then there's, have a fresh look at what did Pius write as longer length notes. Going back to that one, everybody brings out that note. He was perfectly capable of writing that, but he didn't. Right? This part that where I can hold it up on the second line.
Thank you.
You know, he
I see. It's reverse. So second bar, the highest, the first high. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
in measure 4, right?
Yeah.
Everybody brings that out as melody, but he didn't write that, and he could have. You know, so it's very exciting, I think, to take a fresh look into the score, even if you've played something a long time.
Yeah.
So any other questions or thoughts you have?
No, you gave me really a lot to think about and to. I understand everything you said to me. It's just a lot. I need to kind of process it, and then. But yeah, it's great, excellent feedback, and which I will use not only for this piece, of course. So I thank you very much. I appreciate it a lot.
And I encourage you sometimes just sit and look at a page of the score at a time, and just sing, you know, as best you can along to, oh, what sticks out? And like you'll get to that long note in measure 4 and realize, huh, he really pointed to that. And then also there's groups of 6 and 6 and 8 and 8. I mean, you another thing is, I'll show you. Here's another place that I circled groups of 4 on the second
Okay.
line. Yeah, so it might be very interesting because the gelatin is always floating along in 3s. When a 4 comes, it might feel so stiff if you played it really correctly, you know, like you would a snare drum study. And that might give you a cool musical thing to react to. So I think one step of learning a very romantic piece is play exactly what's there, and you might see wow, something sticking up very straight instead of just flowing along like the wiggly jello is could be really neat. And you might find some places to, you know, use those different rhythmic structures interestingly.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. I just have a question. Well, I just wanted to say one thing. This recording was unfortunately I didn't put too much. Maybe I didn't have enough time, or I didn't put enough effort in my like interpretation and to think about what I want to do with this piece. So I just kind of played it how it's written. But what I like is that you gave me a totally a new way to see it how it's written. Yeah,
No,
so
I'm
that's
very
really
glad for
interesting.
that.
Yeah, yeah. And I just wanted to ask you: would it be possible for you somehow to send me your the score with your all of your notes?
Yeah, it's not very detailed, but yeah, I can. Why don't you just email me and I can send you my list and the
Okay,
score.
okay, I will.
I'll tell
Thank
you
you
all.
very
My
much.
email is nz or z marimba at me.com.
At M.
me like the word me.
Yeah. Okay. .com.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right. Great job, Danny. Really good.
Thank you.
Good job. Okay, so we'll put you backstage. Layla, I think we're going to go back to the US now. Layla.
Hi, Layla.
Hello. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, all good. So
Okay.
I'm just going to cue your video if you want to introduce yourself and what you're going to be playing. That'd be great.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Layla Stewart. I'm currently a music education major at the University of Texas at Arlington. The piece that I submitted today is a section of Samsara by Fabian Otten. And yeah, I hope the score wasn't too confusing. I skipped a section, so I only like put the parts that I played.
I see. Okay.
So
Now that explains why the first page doesn't look like a first page. Oh, I see. It's measure 32. And then I see you left off in the middle. That was fine. Yeah, I follow.
okay.
Yeah. How long have you been working on this piece?
So this one has probably been, it's like 8-ish months. I played it for, oh gosh, time, last November.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. And how much more? So at the beginning, there's just 30 something measures, and how much more comes at the end?
I'd say 3 or 4 minutes. The entire piece is about like 10 minutes long. So
Okay.
I didn't want a bit,
I think the choice you made was great for this occasion because we got, like half and half of each texture. Yeah, I also watched, I this morning as well, earlier today, and I wrote, your concentration brings me into how this is marked, calm and meditative, very well. Like right away, just I think not only are you concentrating, as you know, we all would playing, but I feel like you're really in that spirit of it musically. So that was very nice. I wonder how much you've thought about the 9/8 meter.
Let me get my score real quick.
And if you're able, Megan, if you can project the score, that might help us too.
So I guess like the 9/8 meter is like 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3.
Right.
I kind of like thought of like the first 6/8 notes as like kind of together, and then bum bum bum. It's kind of like its own little grouping.
Yeah, I think I hear you playing it really all quite connected. So it makes sense to me that you're thinking of it the way you just described. But Fabian Otten did make he beamed it in groups of 2. So that would lead me personally, like as I said earlier, I start out with a meter of a piece, and the next biggest thing that I look for is how are notes beamed. And especially in an odd meter piece, that's you need that ticket right away to kind of get you off on the right track, I think. I would bring out all of those a little more. See, I'm sight reading this, but like this. So let's see how fast this is going. So that gets this sort of dance going that, look what happens in the 4th measure. It's kind of grouped. Well, yeah, actually, you could fit that, the upper rhythm. I don't know if am I singing that right? Dum dum ba, dum dum didum ba ba da. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm singing it right.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Okay, so this meter is sort of like it's in 3/4 plus 3/8, right? Da-dum, dum, dee-dum, ba-dum, ba-ba-dum, bum. And that's, I would really try to make it all feel like going now. And because you don't have any group, you're sort of not showing any groupings. I think you could do both. Maybe if you did play the left hand more, dunk, dunk, dink, poke, the gong, dink, dink, do, do, go. It could be really cool that the dolce upper line maybe does float. That could maybe be sort of just a longer shape. You see what I mean? That it could be really neat to have, like it's 2 people, like it's or a band going dunk, dink, dunk, boom, gonking, and then a flute going over the top. So I think this is a really attractive piece. And that might make that even more interesting. And again, because I mentioned to somebody earlier, adding rehearsal letters to this piece might help you a little bit know where you are, especially since you say it's really a big piece. It's 10 minutes long. I think this is, well, if you go to the next page, Megan, you'll see I wrote letter A at some point. It wouldn't be letter A. It would be letter C or something, right, if we had the whole piece. But, and sometimes when I'm trying to figure out for myself how I feel sections lie in a piece, sometimes I just write a box with no letter in it. And I'll decide later what letter it is, you know, but like, this feels like a new thing to me. And why I think that's really could help in this piece is this is a kind of piece I call a tone poem. There's symphony orchestra pieces that are symphonic pieces that are sort of tone poems. That it's a piece that feels like it tells a story. It feels like you could invent your own narrative to this piece. And having the addition of double bar lines and these boxes that show a section might help give you some ideas in making a longer arc out of the piece. And a lot of times, a piece of this size can be really challenging to find your own, you know, a structure or a story you want to bring to it. And oftentimes, a great starting point is if there's one section, it could even be, you know, in the middle somewhere, that you're like, gosh, I love this part. This part feels to me like it just stopped raining and the sun is coming out. Or, you know, like maybe you suddenly have some kind of an image. And that can be your ticket to sometimes understanding what to do with an entire piece. Like if that's the part that it stopped raining and the sun came out, it was raining before then. And, you know, then add to that story and that feeling. And it can help you, you know, make a piece your own, as we're talking about a lot. At the bottom of this page, you see where I circled these. This is a very interesting articulation where there's a staccato and a legato mark. You see those that are circled?
Yes.
That's a funny thing, right? Oh, it should be short, but it should be long, right? I personally love stuff like that. In my method book, for mallet marimba playing, I wrote 50 studies, and on one of them, I wrote that combination of articulations and also a little ring mark off one note. And my editor called me up and said, "What the heck is this? Do you really need all those?" And I said, "Yes, I do. I want to make somebody really think about some special attack on that." So maybe it could be like everybody's gonna notice how you played it because you do a weird thing of like keeping the mallet on the bar and then lifting off. I think this is an invitation to do something weird there, Layla, of, you know, and make those little fifths or like little gnomes popping out, or I don't know what they could be in your story. But I think you kind of missed that invitation. And okay, go ahead a couple pages, Megan. You'll see. Well, so now we're moving into the new section that I call section B, but obviously it's not section B, it's something else. Until here, the underpinning was pretty much all eighth notes, right? And those are eighth notes that that are not so much the gelatin I was talking about before. those eighth notes are rhythm, right? Through the whole piece, there's this very almost hypnotic dunking, 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 doo doo doo, dunking, dunking. So, you know, we're just recognizing a common texture in marimba writing is sort of an ostinato, right? So those constant notes make ostinato. These constant notes go back to being more like the Pius Chung piece, right? These are adding up to, these are gelatin. But I think they're a different thing than in Pius's piece. These, one of the, you'll see I wrote underneath, we have C sharp and what is this section about? Cluster chords and mesmerizing 4/8 note repeating melody. So in the top voice, we have this. This, yeah. And then all this stuff. I won't take me too long to figure out all the rest, but that's the it's a very beautiful chord actually. This is kind of this clustery chord that all the other stuff adds up to. It's kind of crunchy. I really like it. And then we got, cutting to the chase, I suggest you play all this more murmury and kind of foggy. And again, I love looking at notation to just see, what is this? When you play it, when I listened to your recording this morning, I jumped up and ran to my piano. It's like, what is going on here? From here to the end, it made no sense to me because you were bringing out all the 16th notes. So if you're just going and everything that was coming to my attention was just attacks, it was almost like strobe lights going off or something, but I couldn't figure out what it was about. So the more I really just sat on this first couple lines for a while and played it till I made this like cloud on my piano and could hear, oh, all that is happening at the top of this page is like, it's like a beautiful chord just hanging there. And it looks like there's a million things going on, but I think it's just, wow, it's just hanging there, the whole first bar, the whole second bar. Then the bass note changes and it hangs there. So I challenge you to figure out how to do you play piano at all? If you
yes.
Yeah, I think you might really come to some understanding sitting at a piano and just, because it started to dawn on me. I was like, oh, I like this part. But it took a little while to just like, what is it? Because it looks like it's busy, but it's not. And see, here's something for everybody. This is another thing 16th notes do. They sometimes are not busy. They sometimes are just hanging there, and they're like a marimba, you know, it's a thing the marimba can do that if we just go, it's really just something that, it's a sonority. It adds up to a sonority that just hangs there. And I think the most interesting part of it is just, you know, that the bass note changes. Okay, so now look at, so the next thing I wrote in blue is, when big picture, not so much is happening, create an effect of less activity. So I was already just saying, play it like you're murmuring, but even I would encourage you to look as you play this like nothing happening here, folks, and maybe get a kind of gushy bass mallet and just go bong and have a C sharp coming through all that, and then bong and have a B coming through all that. And let us just revel in hanging there. So all these 16ths could just add up to a string section holding chords. And so do you see how I arrived at this? That like there is nothing going on. There's no melody really to pick out of this, except that first thing that I played. There's a melody made out of 4/8 notes. And then there's a melody made out of 3/4 notes, which you could bring out a little bit if you want. But it's mainly, I think, the conglomerate, maybe with a little bit of that melody poking out. This one. And then after a while, it's right. So there's like a little hint of that, mostly bass note and fabulous cluster chord. They're really nice chords. And then you get to measure 89, where this is another spin on my first earlier statement about hating arpeggios. This 89 is 3 beats of arpeggio, which is it's just an arpeggio gets you up the marimba, but that's all one chord. Where you see I wrote that's all one chord. So just kind of think. I'm just sort of trying to make marimba interpreters out of you, of like, we have to take, it is good marimba writing, but why was it written? It was written to make a cloud of sound. Sometimes it's often not the case that 16ths were written because every single 16th note is important. And why I go back to my blue sentence, when big picture, not so much is happening, create an effect of less activity. Why we want that for the first 3 lines of this page is that the bottom line is marked, we can't quite see it, but you could scroll up a smidge, Megan. I'll just tell you, this line is marked agitato. And it's too hard to do. Don't worry about it. The last line here where it's marked agitato at measure 90. Now this is how you can play with 16th notes. You can make them blurry, or perfect, Megan. Now we could go, and intentionally make them a little crispier, so that when the composer writes agitato, I would show the 16ths a little bit. I think he's asking for that. Okay. Now, let's look at the last 2 measures of this page. You have that's what those groups of 2 turn out to be. And you never played that rhythm quite right. Did you have a reason? You sort of played, every time you got to the duple bars, you were super free with them. What was your thinking behind that?
Well, one was the sticking was really tricky for me. No accuracy between I think the second or third, but I listened to different people play it, which there weren't many recordings, but my interpretation was there's this constant rhythm for the most part in the 9/8, and then the duple is I wanted to contrast it a bit and stretch it out a bit more.
Okay, I'm good with that. I'm okay with you stretching it, but I think you weren't really thinking of how. Or I encourage you to look at really how that rhythm correlates to the bar before. And I see what you mean about how awkward it is. So this is one of those moments where, I don't know if you could see, one of the things that I did, depending on your grip, with a cross grip, you can sometimes swing your elbow way out and go. I was playing some notes kind of backwards, this way around rather than front way. But another thing to think about is, in rare moments, if you feel like it would help to leave out a note somewhere, just don't tell anyone. There's been so many times where I've gotten to work with a composer on a piece, and I show them, for instance, let's say it was this measure, where I go, boy, it's really so tough that I have to go from this way around to this way around, to get these small intervals. First of all, if I do get to coach a composer on writing for marimba before they write, that's the number one thing I tell them not to write, right? Is one white note and one black note. Be very judicious about switching the direction of that, because it looks like it's, easy breezy on a piano. I just show them this is like the worst thing for us. So look at how many notes are similar between some of these chords. There's always, most of the time, there's two notes in common between one chord to the next. So that means, for instance, if you left, you play the first of the duple chords, if you left the C sharp out of the second one and you just played the B on the bottom and the F sharp and the G sharp, the C sharp, guess what? It's still really ringing. Do you see where I'm talking about?
Yes.
So if you could figure out, like, man, if I could just leave out one or two of these, and it saves all this insanity and then that you're able to play much more musically, yum bum ba yum bum, because you actually can handle it rather than just be shifting like a mad woman. Just leave a note out. Invariably, if I had a chance to show a composer that, they would say, "Oh gosh, sorry, yeah, leave the C sharp out of the second one." I've never had a composer, or if they say, "God, I really want 4-note clusters," then I'll do it. But a lot of times we don't have to go crazy if we're not really serving a musical purpose. On the next page, again, I'm just showing you another example of this at the top, Megan, perfect. I'm just showing you that this is all on one harmony until there's the G natural at the end. So that kind of gives me a clue about interpretation, that I could be going change, I'd probably slow down those last, I'd probably build in some rubato so I could, by on the place where that G natural comes right after my red bracket, I'd slow it down so I can bring out the G natural a little bit. So just be thinking about, we do want to bring out things that are interesting chord changes, note shifts like this. And we want, the other side of that is we can't only be looking for where to be more expressive and where to do more rubato. The other side of that is we have to be looking for when can I not do rubato, because again, like I said to Dane, that you can't make everything important, right? So if there's rubato all over the place, I don't know what you really want to point to. But here is a really great example. I could play this all sort of just flat and flowy, and then show you that cool G natural at the end of the bar. Okay, next page. I had a couple of rhythm things. This here, I think the composer starts playing with 9/8 brought out in different different subdivisions. So this, what I wrote above, this looks like it's going dunka to gunka to gunka to dunka to dunk to gong dinka to dunka to dunka to dunka to dunk to ding dunka to duku 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 dicka to dicka to dicka to 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. And where I got all that from was looking at the beams, the beaming. If you look at measure, the second system middle measure, what made me think after the group of 5, what made me think group of 5 and then 4 is that the group of 5 is one hand and then the other and then both and then one hand and then it's both again. So that's where I was thinking, oh, maybe that could be the beginning of a 4 group. And then it looks like 3s and 3s. And I think it could be just fun to really look at that rhythmically. And I think the composer's giving you some, if we just look at the third system of this page, that looks like it just, right, 4 beamed groups of 6, right? 4 groups of 6. It's beamed that way. And after you look at that, measure 114, this is the bottom line of what we're looking at. Just take a quick glance at the third measure of this page we're looking at. And you see how different that looks in the beaming, right? It's all this fancy stuff is going on. And this is what I mean about finding, it's so fun, I think, to look at the clues in notation. I think on this page, the composer, by how fancy the beaming gets in measures, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th measure, he's saying, oh, we're taking a trip to Eastern Europe here, and I'm going to show you some fancy Eastern European dance rhythms with, cool groupings that it all lands and we're back into 4 beats to a bar. But I think, we can just tell that by glancing, on top of which it becomes fortissimo. And it's just a lot of clues that something should really pop there. And why I'm bringing this out and kind of a theme for the day is look at how many times, like when we were looking at Pius Chung's piece, we realized that in order to bring out the longer length notes, the 16ths need to go into the background a little bit, right? We're putting things into 3 dimension, right? What's close and what's farther away. So same thing here. We're just looking for and we're doing that with dynamics, right? And so this you have to do this same. You're going to use dynamics too, with regard to these fancy rhythm measures. Instead of the 1st First one where I wrote all the red could be I'm gonna sing this again. You see how there's a beam that goes across the top of the first bunch, and then there's one little 3 group by itself, and then there's a 1 and 2 and 3 end at the end of the bar. I'm going to see if you can catch me singing that with dynamics. I'm just going to sing the top line. Do 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 da 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 do 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 da separate like if he broke the beam, I'm gonna sing it separately. Do 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 da da do go do da bo da dee da do da 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 do go, right? P.S. This happens all the way through the piece Merlin, and you'll see that one of the things a lot of people blow through in Merlin is how interestingly all the beamings are written. Very similar to this. Some are put together, some are separate. So, and then on top of that is phrasing. I'll sing the same thing again, and now I'm gonna add the phrasing. So I do that by leaning on the first note of a phrase. So here's the first group. I just sang you this. Do, 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 do. But because of this phrase, you see it underneath, I'd sing do, da, do, da, do, da, do, da, do, 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 da, dee, da, 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 dee, da, ba, da, da, ba, da, da. So I'm showing the phrases by leaning on the beginning of a phrase and slightly diminuending across where the phrase mark is. So there's a lot of layers of stuff going on right there.
Just sorry, Nancy. Sorry to interrupt. We're just running a little bit behind. So, you can wrap up though. That's cool.
Yeah. So last thing for you, Layla, is thinking about different stroke types. I kind of talked about that some, when we were talking about the articulation, that special thing that's got the dot and the tenuto. So maybe some of the things that I was just singing as heavier, for instance, you could kind of play into the bars more and then let some things just kind of come off lighter. So also just think about how your strokes can play into everything I just talked about. But it's an interesting piece. There's so much in it. And yeah, I hope you keep going with it.
All right. Thanks, Nancy. Well done, Layla. Great job. All right. So we're going to move.
And Layla, if you had any questions, feel free to email me, or if there's something quick, maybe we can do it now. Up to you.
We can do it quick now if you want to, Layla, if you have anything.
Oh, a quick one? Oh no, it was a longer one. I guess I'll ask it later.
On what topic?
I guess like analyzing a piece. Do you tend to do it do you sit down and like analyze it before, or like all the stuff that you wrote? Do you go do that like along the way, or do you like play it out and then think about it, or what's your approach?
I'm really glad you asked that. That is super important. I do that from the first moment I look at it, because I don't want to play it out. I don't want to be playing it for days and thinking, oh, I'm going to learn the notes first, and then maybe there's something to look at in regard to everything we just talked about. Right away. I've never seen this piece before today, and I wrote all this the first time I looked at it. So I would do the same thing if I was playing it. Because, yeah, you want to be thinking of your end goal right from the moment you flick on your imagination. What could this be? And that's why I spent an extra minute on that last section I played you or sang you. It's like how fancily it's written is a clue of like, whoa, there is some complicated, cool. The first day I would practice it, I would probably do it very slowly, but I would see, wow, that's going to need some special attention because it's not just groups of 6. So right away, suss out the lay of the land. And you often can do that just by looking at how much that stood out to us, that, ooh, the notation's really different right there. Yeah, because you want to be, first time you're reading something is so exciting to catch the composer's messages. His messages or her messages are not notes, right? Well, sometimes a lot of what we were talking about is just notes, like, oh, it's just repeating notes. Oh, this is about a cloud of sound. Sometimes, that is a message I get from repeating groups. But you want to just be taking in the messages of this amazing thing that music notation is, that somebody we may not ever get to talk to passed along all these messages in how they notated it. So cool.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry to stop you, but we must move on. Thank you, Layla.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move to Jack now. Jack has a little bit of a intermittent internet, but he can hear you very well, and he speaks he speaks very well as well. So you should be fine. Jack, do you want to introduce yourself, buddy?
Yes. So I'm Jack. I'm from the UK, and I've just finished my first year studying at Newcastle University. The video you're going to see is from my end of year recital from this year a few weeks ago, and it's As the Snow Falls by Robert Otomo, which I've been learning since September, October time.
Okay.
So yeah, enjoy.
All right. Sorry, Nancy. I think I muted you there. Sorry. That was my.
Very nice, Jack.
Oh, thank you.
Were you playing along where you are?
I was a little bit, yeah. I'm just, I'm on my marimba to stay here.
So, like I said, the Layla, you have also a very nice performing, a very nice atmosphere you create when you start to perform, and your performance presence really draws me in, and it set up the piece perfectly. The main thing I want to talk to you about is some stuff we've talked about with 16th notes is going to relate in a couple places. Not at the beginning. At the beginning, and a few other spots, I think boo 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 is part of the melody. There, I think the 16th notes are, arguably part of the melody. In other spots, they go into the background. But the main thing I suggest you think about is tempo. One of the things, I never heard this piece before, but looking at the score earlier, I noticed it starts espressivo, and then a dotted quarter equals 40, and then it goes a tempo. And I put on my metronome. So here's 40. So you didn't land, there can be some rubato around that, but you didn't land at that tempo very often.
No.
And let's look at the lay of the land here. Is we start espressivo, we go to a tempo, and then on the next page, you don't need to be looking at this. I'm just going to kind of give you a laundry list right now about what happens with tempo. There's a little 1 bar rallentando, and then it goes back to a tempo, and then there's a teeny poco retard, and it goes back to a tempo, and then there's a teeny rallentando, and it goes back to a tempo, etc. So I think Robert is mainly intending you live around here. Right? And so as much as I love the tenderness with which you're doing it, I think the beginning is even so a little too slow. And then when the first tempo comes at measure 9, and maybe we can look at that score, Megan, if you have it. I think it's pretty important maybe to get in tempo by the third system here, where my arrow lands. Because you know what else that tells me? It tells me the composer is thinking this is sort of a simple melody. And right, so if this right, if that floats along more easily, it's a really different feeling that brings to the piece, right? And I think what you do beautifully is very expressive and tender, but it's a lot for the whole piece to do that.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you to find a little middle road of where can it just go easily. And imagine, even if you're in a very thoughtful mood and you take a walk by yourself, you know, it could still be, I don't want to pull you super far out of the meditative quality you have, but if you were just taking a walk by yourself, we would just walk, even at a slow pace, pretty steadily, and that can be a lot of thoughts going on then, right? It doesn't make it less meaningful that it would be steadier. So that's what I would encourage you to put a metronome on 40 and see if you can make friends with it, still feeling like it's very expressive and meaningful at a steady tempo. More might start to happen with little dynamics and touch and, some other tricks besides using, only timing. On the next page, another one of the kind of big picture things pops up where I wrote, if we can switch to the next page, Megan. There we go. There's a cool harmony change that comes around right here. And that's the kind of thing you could set up and, maybe put a little space around that. Like I was talking to Layla with bringing out a note when it brings a surprise, accidental or something. Same thing here. Set up for, if you're going, rubato, tender, caressing everything the way you were, in this spot and in a couple other places where suddenly a really neat harmony comes, you didn't have a device like rubato left to show us, like, you know what I mean? So if I would save a touch of rubato for when the places you feel like, whoa, this is such a groundbreaking, super neat chord. That happens a few times. My comment in blue just before that is a couple times your sound got a bit harsh when you heat things up to forte. And I see you're playing with graduated mallets. You have at least a softer bass mallet.
Yeah, it's just the bass mallet, which is a bit softer than the other three.
I think for a piece this warm and fuzzy, I would go another step softer with the bass mallet and a different tenor mallet.
Okay.
Because in the register you're in, then when you want to play out even more, we won't get so much attack and we'll get more, lush fundamental rich tone. Yeah. And same thing happens on the next page. If we can shoot ahead, I wrote the louder stuff becomes a little harsh and smacky sometimes.
Yeah.
It wasn't crazy bad or anything, but why change mallets? Why do we change mallets? We should, in a certain way, be able to, I'll answer that question. We change mallets because certain tools in our hands feel like, oh, I can just do what I want more easily. We should also be able to, if you gave me your mallets to play this piece, I would make that work. I'd have to kind of back off a little bit in those places where you want to get fuller or, bring it out. But I would hit I would hit a ceiling where I couldn't play in to the bars too much more. I would get smacky. So by playing with softer mallets, you can punch it more and still have a beautiful, rich sound.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you to experiment with that. Megan, if you can go ahead at this point now, 2 pages. Yeah, to the last one. Oh yeah, sorry, one, I already talked about that. Okay, here. This, like at the very beginning of the piece, I wrote these 16ths are maybe melody, whereas in 2 bars later, these are not melody. Those are definitely background, right? So you've got to be, you also sort of, you know, most of the, about half this piece, the bass is playing sort of arpeggiated, boop, 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 underpinning, you know, slightly arpeggiated or scalar, where we don't need to hear every note. We need to hear, I would say, you're bringing out the melody number 1, whatever's on the, you know, your melody line. Number 2, I haven't said this often enough today, is kind of the bass note is number 2, right? We really need the bass note because it's always, especially in this piece, the anchor, right? The literally the fundamental of these patterns. So it's very important that we hear those richly. But yeah, so then the everything else could be babied a little bit, could be lighter.
Okay.
And then here's another one of the great chord changes where you could set that up with, if it I would be a little bit more free or more rubato probably to set up all of those. So I think the biggest issue, oh yeah, let me just look at my, I have one more thing that I thought of this morning. The issue of line. So you have these pretty melodies, right? And we've already talked about maybe consider rolling back the rubato or you know, because I think it will mean more when you pull it out than if you do it as much as you're doing right now.
Yeah.
But then also think about line. A couple of times I wrote, make sure you deliver what you intend and how you would sing it, not just play what is comfortable or helpful physically or technically. So sometimes I felt like you'd go, let me see if I can think of an example. Well, just beware, is some of your rubato happening because of a technical thing and not a moment that you want to bring out? And if so, just see if you can ease out, you know, ease some of it out. But also when there's a line, like maybe this. This. So I had a ball playing that part on the piano this morning. It's super catchy. And that should just be, you know, it's just sort of like an anthem, right? That should be pretty solid. And underneath it's just, I want you to really think in lines like that, that you love how that is shaped, and it's really like you'd sing it like an anthem. God, what if this was the kind of thing? What if it was sort of like a national anthem line or something, everybody's favorite song people sing proudly together or something? Think of how your voices would soar, and then make that shape and just make a nice accompaniment underneath. So sometimes I think I don't know if that's a spot where this happened, but you sometimes get caught up in all the 16th note stuff instead of just, how do you really want to deliver that anthem? So, any questions? Does that all make sense?
I mean, yeah, that definitely makes sense. In terms of like the tempo thing that you mentioned, part of the reason it was a bit slow was because I was trying to fill time in my recital. So I purposely played it a bit slower than written because I didn't have enough time in my recital. And I thought if I play it slower, especially in the acoustic of the room I was playing it, play it slower, it means it'll resonate a bit longer, it'll feel a bit more expressive. But in future, I think I'll try and do it a bit faster, like you said, because then it means with less rubato, especially, I can bring that out and it's more kind of emphatic, if you like, when I use it.
Yeah, exactly.
So that thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad example you bring up about, wanting to play different tempos and different acoustics too. But then it could have been straighter, even if it was slow in spots. Right? So you just want to save rubato to really point at something special.
Yeah.
But it's a cool piece. You play it really nicely.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a final question, if that's all right.
Sure.
Yeah. I was just about to say, if you've got any final questions, go for it.
Kind of similar to Layla's question earlier. When you're kind of approaching a new piece, what's like the process that you go through to kind of start learning it to the point where you first see it to the point of performance?
I love that you guys are asking this question. So if I had to learn this piece today, I would put a metronome on 40.
Yeah.
Before I even start, I would just look around. Oh, the whole thing's at 40. Okay. And then espressivo dolce. Okay. So then even while I'm just sight reading the first lick, I would know do go 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 go. Hang on. Yeah, I would just have the metronome on and even just sing go 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 go. I'm right now intentionally singing rubato over a steady click. This is a pretty cool thing to do, actually. Here, let me do this some more. Okay. Go 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 go. Deep bo 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 bo. I'm in the section that can be free. Dong gong 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 dong gong go 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 dee dee da. Go 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 go. So I know I'm not with it, but I like having it there as a reference. So sometimes I really do, in a part that I know can be rubato, I practice like this with a click where I note, oh, I'm falling a little bit behind it. I might make it up now. I might let an extra beat happen, but it's keeping me kind of in the zone.
Yeah.
And then I would maybe just pick out in the first section that's on tempo, just the melody, with, so this is my first pass of the piece again. I might as well start to kind of get it in my ear, even if it's only playing one hand with the metronome, because again, it's showing me the composer's intention. It's like, he had a metronome. He says about 40. So if I feel that that's a little fast, he says CA means approximately 40. I might feel like, oh gosh, that really feels too fast to me. I'll put it on 36, but still practice it being pretty steady. So I'm in the ballpark of finding my way through the piece. And yeah, maybe I would just sight read the top line first, and then maybe just a measure, maybe measure 9, where the first tempo melody comes with something in the other hand. And I often practice a whole measure plus one note. So it's a measure leading there, stop.
Next bar, yeah.
Or even the same bar 8 times. And so now I feel how this bar floats and lands.
Yeah.
And so already you can see this is just my first way into the piece. I'm learning. I'm starting to build a skeleton in my head of what kind of artwork this is, right? What does it feel like? I'm just going to, so, what others might do is slowly read every single note. If I went dink, 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 dunk, dunk, oh God, what is this? Chord. I really know nothing about this piece, right? Whereas my first example was all about like, how can I grab at something that really is what it is, and then work myself into being able to do it. And yes, some of them I'm going to have to practice even slower, but it still helps to have started with the real framework of where I'm headed. Yeah. Because I know the spirit of the piece.
Yeah.
So in one line, Tim, I've just recently edited an article by Theodore Milkov that was really great. And he has this quote: start learning a piece with the end in mind. So he means with what this piece will be eventually when I can play it. When I can, what do you think it is right from the beginning? Make your best guess of what you think it is and learn it with, wow, when I can finally do this, I want it to sound like that. So that's really great to start there when you're learning a piece, because then all the technique you're going to build is going to be in service of this dream you're already building.
Yeah.
For what it could be.
Yeah, great. Jack, you actually have a session, I'm sure you know, with Theo on the 11th of July. Yeah. So you can ask him that question.
I will indeed. I will ask him that exact question.
Great. All right, we are going to have to move on. Nancy, that's an amazing perspective on that. I love the rubato metronome thing. That's actually harder than it sounds. I think I would have to really work at that, to be honest.
Well, so I just look at it like kind of almost like I'm leaned into it, or la la la, it's happening, and then I'll come back to it when I want to.
Yeah. It's really good. And I think the stronger you are in terms of your confidence with the pulse, the harder it is in a way, because things, like to come back to point 1 is difficult. So yeah, really great. All right.
Good to meet you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
All right, we're going to go to these no stranger to yourself, I'm sure.
They're no stranger.
Hi.
Hi. So
all right,
watching.
So, I'll leave it to you, but I'm going to queue up your video for you.
Where are you guys?
At home. At home, Boston.
In Boston. Okay, you're 2 miles from me.
Yeah.
So for everybody watching, these two are my students.
Yeah.
Sheila and Xinyao. And yeah, introduce yourselves.
Yeah, so we're XY duo, and we're also a twin sister, and my name is Xingyue Xue and her name is Xinyao Xue, and we're both study at Boston Conservatory with Nancy and Sam Solomon. Yeah, so the piece we're going to play is a duo called Afghanatron by Max Less. Yeah.
Great. All right, let's hear it.
I think you only played this piece for me maybe once. We never really worked on this piece. Is that right? I feel like I haven't heard it.
Couple more, maybe 2 or 3 times. Not much.
Well,
Yeah, not,
so this is from your performance in China last summer, right?
yeah,
And it's interesting hearing it back on a stage, and because the hall's ringy, the audience is noisy, and
yeah,
so it feels like you're partly projecting so that you can cut through the audience being noisy. Was it like a kids concert or something?
Yeah, it is.
yeah. So many kids.
Yeah. So I wondered, and when I watched this morning, that if you would play it differently if it was a different hall. I feel like you were playing it a little blasty. But here's, the piece is really fun, and the style is, I think, kind of like an old-timey kind of jazz style, which
Yeah.
I think you do the swing feel really well. And I'm not surprised because I know your father is a jazz drummer. So these two grew up with a really good understanding of swing style. And I think it's great to honor that style. It's historic and it's a period piece. So I think it's a pretty cool piece. I think I should have looked up Max Leff. I don't know anything about him. Do you know about him? Is he a jazz writer or a percussionist or?
Yeah, I can tell you a bit about Max Leff if you're interested. So Max Leff is a Danish pianist who, I don't know if this is true, but this is what I'm told. He turned up to a jazz gig and there wasn't a piano. So in the corner of the room, there was a vibraphone, and he literally said, well, I'll just try the vibes, and then got addicted to vibraphone. So his early career is sort of jazz piano, sort of, and then morphed into vibraphone mallets, and then he started writing for Safri Duo and stuff like that. So
very helpful.
Wow.
Cool. Very interesting. So one thing that strikes me is, I don't know if this was maybe an old piece for Safri Duo. Well, yeah, it was written in 93. Maybe there wasn't a 5-octave marimba then. Well, I began to play a 5-octave marimba in the late 80s, but they might not have been very common yet. This piece doesn't ever go very low in the marimba part. And I think the writing is really good, but I think kind of a little bit of a problem of the piece is it's all in the mid to high register, it feels like.
Yeah.
And I think what might be neat to experiment with, is there ever any place, Singwei, where you could play the marimba part down an octave? Or, just so it might be kind of neat if you or even just, I think because of the hall you were in, your mouths were a little bit on the hard side. Maybe try to find some really boomy boom. So even if you played it exactly as written, but whatever bass notes there are, you just boom, boom, like really, really play up the bass, because I think this piece needs anything it could get to separate your parts, because right now everything's on top of each other. Sometimes even in Xinyao's part, the vibraphone part says solo right before letter C, but you're playing, I think, the same rhythm there. Yeah, you're sort of like right under her.
Right.
And so there's some places I think it's intentional that he wants it to just be, sort of like two little birds chirping together. So some of the high stuff is intentional, but then another thing, maybe sometimes is played drier. So, because we have you're kind of doubling the same mid to high register, and vibraphone is adding extra bell tones to it all. Sometimes in a jazz band, when the vibe player is just comping, just playing in the background, they play just very boop, dee, boo, doo, ba, boop. Maybe you could find ways to be drier on the vibes when it's just kind of the simple catchy melody. Yeah, so I would play around with how can you make your sounds more different. Because in a ringing hall, the marimba rings very nicely, and so does the vibraphone. So both instruments are doing the same thing sonically. Like at the very beginning, okay, so then I even was thinking, the very beginning, the vibraphone part is marked piano, and both of you are marked piano, and which suggests to me the piece should start kind of sneaky, dook dook big dook book dook ba, but maybe even kind of show that rest could be. I don't know if there's no score for this, so I'm flipping back and forth between your two parts. But yeah, as much as you could bring out articulations and dynamics. Now, could you have gotten this audience to be quieter? Another thing, and we've talked about this with regard to various pieces, if it starts, like, what would be the perfect setup for that piece in this hall? I mean, when I was just watching the whole challenge of this in the video, imagining how you're trying to play over the noisy kids and the hall is resonant, if you could set up only this piece, and maybe it wasn't practical to do this, but this is just an example that might give you something to think about for some other halls. I would love to have seen this performance happen where you come all the way to the front of the stage and you get like closer together where we can see your eye contact, and you could start, even if you played like, in profile with the music stands in the middle, we could see each better. And then I would love to see Xing Yao lean down and go dook dee dook dee dook dook ba and then look at you like, want to play? And really make it adorable, right? I think we could make this piece adorable. And so by being closer to the audience, you're like coming right up to them. It might be a cool thing to play with sometime. Because you're almost playing it back, filling up the hall, like you're playing your arrangement of the Sejourné concerto. I want it to be gigantic. And I think I really encourage you to think about the way you interact in the right in the lane of this style, like getting more into, when I watched that video, if I didn't have the sound on, you might be playing the Sejourné concerto, right? So I would love you, when you're playing something this fun and engaging and with such a unique style, I think it should be unmistakable that, whoa, what cute thing are they doing? Ooh. And then I wonder even if it would have made people lean in and like, so it's a really cool piece. The only other thing I'll say is, I think vibraphone, and we've talked about this in some classes. Vibraphone is a tricky instrument, particularly in a hall that big, because you had to really project.
Yeah.
I think classical marimba players, which you both are sort of more, well, you both play vibraphone a fair amount too, but I think vibraphone playing in the hands of jazz vibists is drier in general. And, they do more fancy dampening and pedaling and, so I've shown you guys these videos, but like if you watch Joe Locke's vibraphone, or there's a great video of Joe Locke playing with Bobby Hutcherson, another legendary vibist, Joe's hero, and you don't hear a vibraphone ringing a lot. It's just right, but it's not like going off in its own world. So those of us that haven't played the vibraphone a lot, I really encourage everybody listening to listen to Joe Locke, Bobby Hutcherson, Stefan Harris, Christos Rafaelides, David Friedman. None of these vibraphonists play with a super ringy vibraphone. So you got to make it speak, almost like you were talking these rhythms, like scat singing, like a jazz scat singer would do. And those rests really could be kind of loud rests.
Yeah.
Like where you sort of freeze for a second and just show how tight the rhythm is.
Okay.
So did you have any thoughts related to what I just said, or any questions? Yeah, I think everything that I circled on my part, I already told you about bringing out the bass anywhere you could.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim, if you're listening, did you know Max Leff at all?
No, I didn't, but I knew a lot of people that knew him. So
Would you?
I'm surprised you didn't know this, because this is like Rachel and Laurent's like thing. They play this all the time.
This piece?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember this.
Yeah, they play it quite a lot, which was actually going to be, if you don't mind, Nancy, me sort of interjecting, I had a question for the girls, actually. Like, for me, like, your performance, I'm curious as to the function of the piece within, like, the program. Like, is it an encore, or is it, like, in the middle or at the beginning?
In the middle. I think it's after like very virtuosic solo. So it's
cool.
like a fun piece. Yeah.
That makes sense. That completely makes sense, because for me, whenever I've seen this piece, it's usually done as like an encore.
Yeah.
Which would mean, like, if you look at like the metronome marking, it's quite a bit up for what you did. So 180, which is not necessarily a problem, because you've like backed it up. That makes complete sense for me. Like, was at the end, it would be do you know what I mean? So that completely makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I'll probably play like 200, but maybe that's
we're singing it faster, but it could be.
Yeah.
And then it's drier.
So that's fine then. If that is the function, I think sometimes you do need to think about like the context of your program and how that gives a message to the audience. And sometimes you have to tailor that to your audience. So That's cool. That makes complete sense. Isolated, I was a bit like, I'm not sure, but then I haven't seen like the virtuosic, like crazy stuff before. So that's cool. And Nancy, you were really cool on the like the pedaling of the vibes. What I would encourage you to do if you're doing vibes and marimba is to try and explore playing both instruments together and strike a balance as to where the decay finishes, because you can't alter a marimba note. It is what it is, but you can alter the vibes.
Yeah.
Depending on how much pressure. And once you get that balance, you're basically another marimba player. Yeah, you can give more or less, but at least you've got like the equilibrium in the middle.
Yeah.
And then for the rhythmic stuff, like what Nancy was saying, quite often it's a lot drier. That will then allow you to play more like a marimba player. And I think, I don't know about you, Nancy, but certainly for my students, we play marimba and then we get to vibes. It's like, oh, I've got a pedal. I can like use the pedal, and then it sounds really nice. It's a bit like putting the pedal down on the piano, you know, Mozart. So
we get too carried away with it.
Yeah, because it sounds good. So I think if you can make it sound good dry, you can make it sound amazing with a little bit of pedal.
Yeah.
Force yourself to make it harder for yourself. Yeah. But I thought it was amazing.
Thank you.
Tim, from what you know of Max Leff, does he seem like the kind of man who would be open-minded to some things being moved down an octave?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Sometimes it's good to know just the sense of a person, a composer that you have.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're on the money with the range, because I mean, Safa in the early 90s, there wouldn't have been 5 octaves, so it probably had the range. That is what it is. Like I said, he turned up to a gig with a vibraphone and like probably even composed it on that basis. So yeah, 100%. I would say so. Yeah, for sure. The Scandinavians are pretty relaxed anyway, so so yeah, and then just maybe think about like putting a metronome on. You can put 2 and 4 on for this.
I love doing that. Yep.
Yeah. You naturally have a drummer already. Just playing that will help. But honestly, we're gonna work later on, like next week. So this is cool. We can maybe do something else. But thank you, Nancy. This has been amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Do you have any more questions for Nancy? I'm sure you can speak, but if you have some, you're welcome quickly, or we'll wrap it up.
We don't have any questions.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we'll just bring up everyone on just to say goodbye. Megan on. Great, everyone. Well, thank you for tuning in. For those of you on the live stream, thank you for joining us tonight. We are joined tomorrow by Philip Korosek tomorrow, who's going to be giving his words of wisdom. And then we've got Svet Stoyanov on the 5th of July. So we will see you then. Until then,